All right, so as we do our little meanders through the history of TV, we get these little pockets where we pick like a theme or whatever and stick with that for a little while. So we started with One Step Beyond, which, because you found it on a DVD set, which neither of us had heard of, but it's this show that came out just before The Twilight Zone and is kind of like a sort of more down-to-earth version of The Twilight Zone, but a really good show. Then we watched The Twilight Zone. So now to finish off the trio, I've got The Outer Limits. So do you have any Outer Limits experience? Did you watch it back when it was on?
I didn't watch it like regularly, but I saw one or two of the original shows, and then I've seen it in reruns, which is what I was saying about the One Step Beyond. I'm surprised that I never saw it in reruns, because apparently it's out there, but it's on specialty channels. But The Outer Limits has been on any number of times, and the same with The Twilight Zone. But, I put it all in that same boat of they're all very similar.
Whereas in my case, they remade The Outer Limits in 1995, from 95 to 2002. So that's The Outer Limits that I was more aware of, because I was watching a lot of TV at the time. But I don't remember ever actually watching it. It would just be on all the time. So
yeah, I think I saw some of those newer ones, too.
Right. I don't think I even really knew it was an old show. It just around that time X-Files was big, so I just assumed it was an X-Files thing, which maybe is why they revived it. But then I realized what I do know about The Outer Limits is, like we were saying, it's like The Twilight Zone has endured because it gets reruns and it gets parodied all the time, so it just kind of like ferries it on from generation to generation, where for whatever reason, One Step Beyond never hit that point of being referenced, where The Outer Limits did, because once again, just like with The Twilight Zone, it turns out I know it from The Simpsons because of the oscilloscope in the opening and the do not adjust your vertical, we have taken control of your set. The Simpsons did that. So I'm like, oh, okay. So that's my awareness of The Outer Limits. But functionally, I don't think I've ever seen an Outer Limits. I don't really know anything about it. And I was a little... concerned is too strong of a word, but when you were looking up stuff last week after we finished the podcast, and there were, alien outfits. If you do a Google image search for The Outer Limits, you find a lot of rubber alien masks and stuff. So I was like, is this going to be one step too far? Is this going to be too silly? Because One Step Beyond is a classic, really good show. Twilight Zone, classic, really good show. Is this going to be the bad one? But from what I did a little research of, it seems like we don't have much to worry about. It's also a very well-regarded show.
I also remember when I was looking at some of the photography photos from the original Outer Limits, I commented that it was very reminiscent of Star Trek.
Right.
Like the aliens in Star Trek looked like the TV show, the original. It looks like they actually took the imagery from The Outer Limits, which would have been before Star Trek, and copied a lot of it.
Well, funny you should mention that, because you're pretty much bang on. So let me just read you my summary, my quick Cole's notes of The Outer Limits. So it was broadcast on ABC starting in 1963. So it was after, I think at this point, One Step Beyond had finished and Twilight Zone was mid-run. It ran for 2 seasons for 49 episodes. Often compared to The Twilight Zone, though with a greater emphasis on science fiction stories. So where One Step Beyond was like sort of...
psychological, human things.
Yeah, like fantastical but believable.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe. Kind of see last week's episode.
But dealing with the human race, not with aliens or...
And then The Twilight Zone, it was kind of just a roll of the dice. It was about a lot of weird different stuff. And then this show apparently was, more science fiction-y. And it had, I didn't write down their names, but there were a bunch of award-winning writers and cinematographers who worked on this show, who weren't necessarily famous at the time, but later went on to become, award-winning people in Hollywood. So it had a good crew. And the show was popular, but in season 2, it was airing against Jackie Gleason, and it just didn't make it, couldn't survive. Yeah. Because you'd think the audiences...
Yeah, because they're not even really the same type of show at all.
Yeah, you'd think the audiences would be pretty split. And I mean, maybe nowadays, it'd just be the sci-fi nerds would watch Outer Limits and everyone else would watch Jackie Gleason. But back then, I guess there just weren't that many TV shows, and it's like, sorry, Outer Limits, I can't not watch Jackie Gleason. So that's why, even though it was well regarded, it only lasted 2 seasons. And Stephen King called The Outer Limits the best program of its type ever to run on network TV. So we know his vote for which one of these 3 was his favorite. And a few of the monsters from The Outer Limits reappeared on Star Trek. They literally did use the same outfits or whatever. So you're not wrong about that. As well as they developed a process making The Outer Limits to make pointy ears, which they also used. They just took it and put it on Spock. So the connection is actually very direct.
That interesting.
Yeah. And despite the fact that William Shatner was in the Twilight Zone with the gremlin. The gremlin on the wing.
True.
But yeah, so the 2 shows are pretty much directly linked. So really reading this stuff, I'm like, okay, it was well regarded. A lot of people, famous ass people worked on it. Everything seems great about The Outer Limits. The only thing that seems like it could be a downside is it's an hour long. And that was one of the things that we really noticed made those other shows work, is that they're a half hour.
And they crammed them full of stuff in 1/2 hour.
Yeah, whereas even with the Twilight Zone, there was one season 4, they extended it to an hour, and it wasn't working. So they put it back to half an hour.
When people chose between The Outer Limits and Jackie Gleason, I think Jackie Gleason was only a half hour too.
Oh, surely, yeah.
So maybe
you watch Jackie Gleason and then you don't want to watch the second half.
You don't want to pick up The Outer Limits halfway through, and maybe you can't. Maybe you can't get enough information in watching the last half to know what happened in the first half. That could have been part of it. People saying, well, I watch half an hour of Jackie Gleason, then maybe I can watch whatever is on after that 1/2 hour too. So I'm getting 2 for the price of 1. And maybe they felt an hour of The Outer Limits was just too much time to devote to.
Yeah, ironically, I mean,
TV.
This would be a weird thing to do from an artistic standpoint, but maybe they would have been better off. Like, let's cut this show down to half an hour and put it on after Jackie Gleason. But I got to admit, I can see that because, yeah, sometimes you just want a nice light show. Even now, right now, as we're about to watch it, I wish it was half an hour. I don't want it to be an hour. I mean, hopefully it'll be good, but that it is quite an investment. An hour is a lot longer than half an hour, you know, like from a TV standpoint, because a lot of times there's still only half an hour worth of content, and that's part of what made One Step Beyond and Twilight Zone so fun to watch, is they cram so much stuff in there. Your head's still spinning, and it's over. You don't have time to get bored of it. So we'll see. So we're watching Outer Limits Season 1, Episode 1. Figure why not? Just start at the start, because that's what we did with One Step Beyond. So that's what we got for this week.
All right, let's go for it.
All right.
There is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission. If we wish to make it louder, we will bring up the volume. If we wish to make it softer, we will tune it to a whisper. Be silent. You people of this planet, you must not use force. I have told you not to use force. Now I warn you, there are powers in the universe beyond anything you know. The planet Earth is a speck of dust, remote and alone in the void. There are powers in the universe inscrutable and profound. Fear cannot save us. Rage cannot help us. We must see the stranger in a new light, the light of understanding. And to achieve this, we must begin to understand ourselves and each other. We now return control of your television set.
So I think it's safe to say Season 1, Episode 1 of The Outer Limits had a lot of problems.
Agreed. I'm amazed that it lasted for 2 years.
First off, yeah, it's just too long, pacing very slow. But, I mean, I got even right away that opening, we have taken control of your set. The sense I got was like a little bit, I don't know what the word is, like bossy. just weird. I got a weird tone from it. Like, don't you try to mess with your set. We're in control.
Domination. Yeah, like.
And that just got worse and worse. By the end of that plot was extremely contrived and pretentious. Like, even for 1963, that was like, because I've seen old 50s movies,
They
Night
could
Fright and
have
stuff.
edited that into 1/2 hour, and it would have been so much better.
It would have been better paced, but I still would have not liked it because the whole plot is just very contrived. Of like, this guy at this radio station is he's contacting other worlds and everything's okay. He's talking to an alien, and that gets out of control right away, where he's like, do you have death? Do you have war? All this stuff that maybe in a novel you'd get to it, but it's like you're kind of jumping straight to fucking home base here with these, like, you know, global giant topics. And then it's like, I gotta go, but don't worry, just as long as we keep the power at this level. So of course the guy working at the station turns up the power, fucks everything up, and it's like Gremlins or something. Don't feed them after midnight. Like, it's just a nonsense clause that just don't do it, and then of course someone does it, which is just poor writing because there's no
But it
sense.
also dragged. That's why I'm saying in half an hour they could have tightened that up so
Right.
much and accomplished the same thing.
But here's what I'm saying is, like, I agree, but this wasn't worth accomplishing because then by the end he turns out the power, the alien somehow teleports to our world, and he's just space Jesus. He's just, you must not use violence, you must live in peace with the people of the world. And it's like annoying. It's like, why are you preaching to me, Outer Limits? You think I don't know this? You think everyone doesn't already know this? Like, no one is going to have the scales fall from their eyes from this piece of shit show with this really bad special effects. Like, oh, the space guy is right. Space Jesus is right.
First they want to kill him, and then they're peacefully going their own ways, despite the fact that this guy is still there.
Yeah. And at least like when later in like the 80s, I mean, you know, you got like E.T., you know, E.T. teaches us that we should be kind to gross, weird looking aliens and stuff, you know, but at least he's not directly, preachily saying like, you are bad warmongers and the universe is huge and you should expand your mind. Like, it's really just bad writing. I hate that kind of writing. I fucking hate that kind of shit where you just like, here's not only my philosophy, but my philosophy is just pablum. It's just shit. And here it is. So you better listen. And combining that with, they literally say that at the start. We've taken control. You sit there and listen. It's like, who the fuck do you think you are? I didn't like that at all.
I'm very surprised that it survived 2 years, because usually the first show is really good because they're selling that product to you and they want to catch you to keep you as a viewer. But if I had seen that years ago, I wouldn't. I don't think I would. I wouldn't switch over to Jackie Gleason.
Exactly right. However, so despite the fact that I just shit on that so hard, I think we maybe just got unlucky because I didn't look up what's a good episode. I just picked the first one because that went so well with One Step Beyond. But there is an episode I'm really interested in. So if you're willing to stay in Outer Worlds world,
let's give it another try, because I was surprised at how poorly done that was.
Yeah, because and also special effects wise, that's why I was saying even by 1963 standards it was contrived, because it's just like all those 50s monster movies where they superimpose a lobster or something over the screen to make it a space lobster, and like it looks really bad.
And you know, actually, when you say about those chintzy 50s alien space movies, that was a perfect example of those.
Yeah, that might have been kind of advanced for TV, but for movies they'd been doing that already for ages. So this other episode, this is season 2, episode 1, and what's interesting about this is the Terminator, the James Cameron movie from 1984. And then the sequel came out in the 90s. Some of the best sci-fi action movies ever made. And the basic idea of the Terminator is a guy comes back from the future because the future has been ravaged by machines. The machines have nuked the world and they've almost killed all the humans. So they send this guy back in time because that's right. The Terminators sent a robot back in time to kill the leader of the humans. They're like, if we can kill him when he's a kid or kill his mom, we're going to win this war. So the humans send back a guy, and it's the guy from the future fighting the robot from the future, but in the present. And one of the best movies of all time. The Terminator is a classic. But apparently, Harlan Ellison wrote an episode of The Outer Limits that is so close to that he sued James Cameron, So let's watch that, because The Terminator is amazing. So if there's ever going to be an episode of The Outer Limits that's good, it'll be this one. So this is season 2, episode 1. It's called Soldier, and it can't be worse, right? So, all right, round 2 with The Outer Limits. Let's give this a try. Do not adjust your set. We blah, blah, blah.
Did the soldier finally come to care for those he protected? Or was it just his instinct to kill? Questions from the dark pit, but no answers. For answers lie in the future. Is it a future in which men are machines born to kill? Or is there time for us? Time. All the time in the world. But is that enough? We now return control of your television set to you. Until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to the Outer Limits.
So definitely that episode was a lot better. But I mean, if we had to give the that Olympic podium with the gold, silver, and fucking bronze, this show is definitely the bronze of One Step Beyond, Twilight Zone, and Outer Limits. I think Outer Limits, to me, is much worse than the other two shows.
Yeah, it's not the same caliber.
Yeah.
But this one was not bad. But again, cut that down to half an hour, you could have had probably a pretty good show.
Yeah, this one went to some ludicrous places. So first off, you had that idea that Harlan Ellison sued James Cameron about the Terminator. I would have taken him to court. I would have fought for sure, because this is not like the Terminator. Like these guys, the Terminator was like, 50 years in the future, robots nuked the world and took it over. This is 1800 years in the future. Humans are just fighting each other for no particular reason. And then that guy gets teleported back. And like I was saying to you while we were watching it, it reminded me way more of Encino Man, which is just a silly comedy where a caveman thaws out and they have to take him home. Because that's what this felt like. Like, they're talking to him, they determine he's from the future, they figure out that his way of talking is a little weird, but they're starting to figure it out. But he knows nothing but war. So what I will do is take him home with me, where my wife and my 2 little kids live, and with no guards or anything. And it's like that's... You ever heard the term jumping the shark? It was coined because of Happy Days, where there was an episode of Happy Days where the Fonz water skis and jumps over some sharks.
Yeah.
So now people use it to mean like when something so dumb happens that you're just out. Like the Fonz did not jump over sharks. That's stupid. So when they take the crazed war maniac from the future back to the pastoral home with no guards at all, that this show jumped the shark for me. After that, like, I'm just out. I'm just like, well, this is still entertaining, but this is silly.
It's beyond the realm of belief. It's the same thing like when you watch a horror movie and the person knows that the maniac killer is on the loose and goes down to the basement anyway.
Yeah.
Or goes into the room.
Or let's all split up.
And it's like, that kind of stuff. And you're like, nobody would do that. You just wouldn't. You'd run in the other direction. You wouldn't go in and check all that stuff out. And when I see those kind of movies and I see that, I say, oh, for God's sake, like, I'm sorry, I can't buy that. And then it ruins the rest of the movie.
And yeah, like an hour it's just not a good length for this type of thing. Because yeah, like if this had been half an hour, it would have been smaller. It would have just been them at the facility trying to communicate with him, and then it wouldn't have gone beyond that. But since they had that extra half hour, they bring him home. Where if they had a movie, maybe, there's this movie called Enemy Mine that's what the whole movie's about. Is it's just a future soldier stranded on a planet with an alien, and throughout the entire movie they learn to communicate and be friends because they have a whole movie. Where this is like in the middle. They took the story too far, but they didn't have time to pay off where it went. Anyway, at the end, another soldier who had teleported back shows up, and while they're fighting, it teleports to the future again.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There you go.
Disintegrate, but
so it's like a lot of neat concepts, but nothing is really nothing's fleshed out.
But in
really.
a comparison, it's not as good as those other two.
And yeah, again, like I was saying, how what I liked the most about One Step Beyond is how down to earth it is relative to the Twilight Zone, where this is the other way. Hey, let's throw some alien masks on people. Let's have some weird future. It was funny, even his future suit, you know, that he's, you know, basically grown in a lab, grew up in a barracks, built for war, but his future suit is literally just a weird looking helmet with these like 1960s, those big headphones that, you know, fit over your whole ear.
Yeah, and the breastplate is very medieval.
Right. But it's just funny that it's not like, you know, like a chip in his brain, or it's not just that they've subconsciously taught him these things. It's literally just big 1960s headphones that say, kill, kill, find the enemy, kill. Like, sorry, Harlan, but that's not clever. You know? That's not... So anyway, yeah, I don't know. I'm glad we watched another episode because that second one was a lot better. But you know, like I've got my little, as we go through different shows, you know, I put things like in my little docket of like, oh, if I ever stumble across an opportunity to watch more One Step Beyond, or watch more Waltons, or watch more Jack Benny, or even like Leave It to Beaver, these shows that I'm like, oh, those are surprisingly good. Like I would happily watch more. And this doesn't even come close. That's more than enough Outer Limits for a lifetime.
Yeah, I don't remember having watched, but I didn't watch a whole lot of them. But what I did watch, I don't remember like thinking, oh my God, is this never going to get over? But that's what I was thinking today. Oh my Lord, this thing is long. And maybe it is because we did watch those other shows earlier, which were so concise, so well written, so compact into 1/2 hour, and yet these dragged terribly. As I said earlier, yeah, if I had to choose between Jackie Gleason and this, yeah, I'd pick Jackie Gleason too.
Especially, yeah, like you come home from a hard day of work, you just want to kind of eat your TV dinner and watch TV. I mean, the second episode we watched was not as preachy as the first one, but it's still kind of like trying to act like it's smarter than it is. Like, let's throw a bunch of heady concepts at you. Like he's showing the future soldier a baby with its mom, and he's like, this represents love, you know. Like it's just like, I don't know, it felt like it's like what a 12-year-old science fiction nerd thinks is like wrote a story for school, and he's like, I'm gonna tell everyone how smart I am. It's just like, shut up. You know? That's really the feeling I get from the Outer Limits. So yeah, definitely my least favorite of those, because again, yeah, it's like One Step Beyond is the good show, Twilight Zone's the fun show. What the hell is the Outer Limits? If it's not fun and it's not good, what the hell is it? Okay.